Today we are here with Dean Hutchinson, Dean of Rice University. Would you like to tell us a bit about yourself, just to start off?
So I've been at Rice for 29 years now. I first came here as an assistant professor of chemistry, and I'm now a full professor of chemistry. I've been in the chemistry department straight on through. Spent time as the Dean of Undergraduates, Master of Weiss College, Master of Brown College, Director of Academic Advising, Assistant Vice President for Student Affairs, and a bunch of other roles since I've been here. I've been Dean for 2.5 years now.
All right. And so you're a master of both Brown and Weiss. Did you change when one was made? Like what? I feel like a lot of masters usually get very attached to their college. What made you want to?
So the masters are appointed for a finite term.
Okay.
Typically 5 years. Every now and then it might get extended. In our case, it was extended to 7 years when we were at Weiss. But it is a fixed term, so there's an expected end date. And so we served our term at Weiss and then moved on. And actually at that time thought we would probably never be masters again. We loved the experience so much that we thought it could never be as good to ever do such a thing again. So we told ourselves that was it. And then the students from Brown came and asked us if we would be masters at Brown, and we said, well, we loved it at Weiss, I bet we'll love it at Brown, and it turned out in fact to be exactly true. We had just as good a time at Brown as we did at Weiss.
Okay. So what sort of challenges, like daily challenges, does being the dean sort of bring you?
The biggest challenge actually is managing time. I'm involved in a very large number of things that involve both curriculum and faculty, as well as individual student life issues involving the colleges, lots of issues having to do with students coming and going, and of course just managing a large organization. There's well over 100 people in my division of the university, and well over a $7 million budget in my division of the university. So it's a business in some regards. So juggling all of those demands of my time, that's the biggest challenge.
Okay. And I do know that you still, try to, when you can, teach a general chemistry course for all the freshmen.
I'm teaching general chemistry this semester, yeah.
Do you find that to be like a particularly rewarding experience? Is it really good to interact with a lot of new faces every year?
That's my favorite thing to do, and has always been that. I love to teach. I've always wanted to teach. I have never wanted to take a job that would take me out of the classroom, and I was very happy that when the provost hired me to be the Dean of Undergraduates, that not only was he willing to let me teach, he actually expected me, and in some regards even required me to continue teaching, because his philosophy is that the senior administration should be involved directly with students in the classroom, because that's what we do. We're a university. We teach.
Okay, and you've been a dean for 2.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a huge amount of time for such a large institution, But
Right.
Are there any things that you've what are the sort of the things you've implemented during your time here?
So, of course, all of these things are collaborative efforts,
Yeah.
right? So basically everything we do, lots and lots of people have been involved in these things. Probably the biggest initiative of all within the last couple of years was the creation this last year of by the faculty, of the program in writing and communication, and the creation of the new Center for Written, Oral, and Visual Communication. And I was involved in all of that, working with the faculty on creating particularly the freshman writing intensive seminars. That was a pet project of mine, that every student coming in would have the chance to be in such a seminar, and was happy to be able to support the faculty's initiative to create that. That was a major issue. My current pet project that I'm most excited about is the creation of the Center for Teaching Excellence, as a group of 16 faculty fellows led by the center director, who's Dr. Steve Cox, who are focusing on bringing innovation, collaboration, research, and scholarship about excellent teaching to the campus.
I actually have a couple of questions about that. One was sort of like, how long has this sort of center been in the making? Like how long has it sort of been tossed around in your mind? And
I've been thinking about it for about 1.5 years before we actually created it, and worked on it aggressively for about 9 months between the time that I first proposed it and discussed it with a variety of folks, to the time that we actually sort of named the faculty fellows and thereby launched the existence of this center.
And how did you go about choosing? Like, was it like other faculty recommended them? Did students? Was it a collaboration?
Who the fellows were, that is?
Yeah, the fellows.
We had a nominating committee that consisted of some of the more recognized and distinguished faculty members on campus, particularly that set of faculty who have been recognized as Minnie Stevens Piper professors. It's a statewide award for teaching. There are 11 Piper professors on campus. They form the nominating committee along with a representative from the Faculty Senate. Nominations came in from deans and department chairs as well as just other faculty, but that committee is the group that decided who the fellows would be.
Okay. And so do you see this like having a large impact on undergraduates now? If not now, then how far in the future do you really see this actually being able to, begin to affect?
I think there'll be some immediate impacts. They're going to bring some programming to campus about new ideas for teaching, workshops for students to learn about teaching. I think there will be opportunities for students to learn from the Center for Teaching Excellence immediately. I think there will be opportunities for students to benefit from the innovations that come from the Center for Teaching Excellence longer term. But I would expect there to be some immediate payoff, and I would expect those to grow as sort of secondary effects get created.
Okay. And so the Center for Teaching Excellence, you've got these 16 fellows?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And they're, obviously supposed to be, the sort of the brightest, best, I don't want to say best, but, professors that are really innovative and
Right.
This is sort of a way that they can share theirs with the rest of the faculty.
Yes, they can share their expertise with
Yeah.
other members of the faculty. They can invite people from outside the university to share ideas. Research that's been done elsewhere can be brought to the campus. Collaborations can be formed. This is certainly not at all limited to those faculty fellows.
Yeah.
Much the opposite. Their goal is to create programming for other activities to take place.
So, is there anything that's going to be done about, say, professors that have been, rated more poorly consistently? I know they're definitely, at least from the students' perspective, I don't know if it's because they just got caught, teaching the bad courses, but there are definitely some professors who have, you kind of dread taking their course because of their, particular style of teaching.
Well, clearly one of the things that we can do is to highlight what effective approaches are, what other people have found to be effective approaches, ways in which other universities may have discovered some innovative teaching approaches that we had not thought of here before, or ways for us to share ideas amongst each other about approaches that could be more effective than, for example, what you seem to be alluding to, which is maybe classes in which effective approaches are not being used. I think that does give us the opportunity to say not, you're doing a poor job of teaching, but rather, here are some ideas about things that you might try that others have found to be very effective.
Okay. So I guess, another thing that's sort of, in the students' minds, been a big thing that happened during your time as dean was last year, the alcohol probation.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's been repealed now. Have you seen a marked change? I know Duncan has actually created this caregivers initiative, and I think other colleges have done something similar.
Yes,
Are there any other, have you looked back and are you proud of how Rice has sort of overcome and, changed as part of this prohibition?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I'm extremely proud of the ways in which the students responded to the challenge that was created by the probation. The goal of the probation was to buy us time for the student leadership and the student body as a whole to initiate appropriate measures to ensure the safety of students on campus. And I had set it as really a three-pronged agenda for them to work on. One was effective enforcement of the alcohol policy. Another was effective alcohol education, both during O Week and throughout the year, and also was the creation of a caregiving support network. All of those got implemented, but then on their own initiative, the student leadership wanted to implement a system of personal accountability for students who may be abusing alcohol or violating the alcohol policy, to hold them accountable for those violations through the student self-enforcement mechanism. So my view of this is that the students not only met my expectations, but far exceeded them. So I've been extremely proud of them. I think that Rice has as safe or safer an environment for students to make their own choices relative to any other university that I'm familiar with.
Okay. So I guess, it's two, was it last week was the Centennial.
Uh-huh.
I imagine, as we talked a bit before, that was a really busy time for you.
Yes.
Uh, I heard that during the actual plan, I don't know how much you were involved with planning it. Do you?
I came on board relatively late. Of course, the planning had begun long before I became the dean, but once I became dean, I joined the Centennial Commission and helped with the planning.
I noticed that it went through a lot of changes over the time. Do you sort of know how that worked?
Uh, Particularly, you might be referring to implementation of additional programming.
Yeah, I heard that when it was first planned, it was a lot of lecture series, and some of the students got involved and tried to make other things.
I think the way things evolved from my perspective was early on my time on the Centennial Commission, when I first began to learn about the plans, I observed and called attention to the fact that the Centennial was planned for the same week as the fall recess. And I thought, that might be problematic, because a lot of students leave for the fall recess and they might not come back for the Centennial, or they may not be able to attend the Centennial events because classwork is going to be taking place at exactly the same time. Even faculty would have a hard time attending because of the demands of coursework and so forth. I talked with the Student Association and the Graduate Student Association about that, and they proposed to the Faculty Senate that the fall recess be moved from Monday and Tuesday to Thursday and Friday, so that the recess and the Centennial celebration overlapped. The Senate approved that. In the process, that created lots of opportunities for students to respond by saying, now we can do more things, what will we do? And Sangela Jane, the Student Association president, and she in particular took a leadership role to say, now that we have this opportunity, what kinds of programs would students be interested in, and help to step into the opportunity that was created there.
Okay, and of course, one of the big things about the Centennial, at least from the perspective of the president and Rice administration, is it was a huge fundraising event. I heard that it was President Lebron's goal to raise over $1 billion, and that it was, I was just wondering, what sort of are there any plans to put that money to use, or will it just become part of the endowment and give us more money in the future?
So I wouldn't focus just exactly on the Centennial celebration. There's an entire Centennial Campaign that actually was launched in 1997. I'm going to forget which year it actually started. I'm sorry, 2007.
Okay,
I was 2007. And that is in fact $1 billion target campaign, and the amount of money raised to date is somewhere over $900 million. I don't know the exact number. So the president is over 90% of the way to the goal that he set for the campus. He's done an incredible job. Much of that is, in fact, of course, the creation of 2 new residential colleges and 2 new serveries and a recreation center and the renovation of Tudor Fieldhouse. It'll involve the construction of the new social sciences building, involve the construction of the new physics building, involve the construction of the Brockstein Pavilion, involve a very large amount of additional endowments for scholarships for undergraduates in particular. It's involved some additional professorships to bring new faculty here. Those, I think, are kind of the big issue items that were out there. Certainly to a smaller scale, but a very visible scale that involved bringing substantial art to our campus. And we've seen enormous construction of art projects up here on campus.
Okay. So of course, all right. I guess my next question is, moving away from the Centennial and moving away from, sort of things you do. I was just wondering about your sort of interactions with Rice, and is there any sort of particular event that you've seen that you've just thought of, now that is characteristically like just Rice as a whole?
I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, clearly I think Beer Bike on an annual basis sort of typifies Rice, particularly the water balloon fight as well as the race and so forth, is kind of this sort of unique, quirky character of the institution. Certainly a great number of the things that are done by the mob. The send-up of Todd Graham at the Tulsa game a couple of years ago was, I think, very classic Rice. I mean, maybe you know the story, right?
Yeah.
Right, where in the world is Todd Graham? Where in hell is Todd Graham, if I remember correctly? I think those are the kinds of wonderful events that take place. Beyond that, though, to me, as much as anything, it is the ways in which the student body sort of takes care of itself, that steps up to show leadership for itself. And in some regards, we had this conversation just a second ago, the ways in which the students responded to a public health concern about abuse of alcohol, I think is really uniquely Rice as well. That I think at most institutions, the way in which the administration would respond to a concern like that would be to say, we're going to institute new rules and new enforcement mechanisms, we're going to come down hard, we're going to crack down and so forth. And our response instead was to challenge the students and say, we think you guys need to take care of this. This is a public health issue, it needs to be solved by the community, and they stepped up and did it. I think that, more than anything else, kind of typifies what the Rice experience is like.
Okay, so my next question is actually, is there any particular student event that really impressed you? Now, we have talked about the response to alcohol probation, but is there any, I guess, more not, some point in which came out of left field, like it was just a group of students working on something that you didn't really have any knowledge of, and then it just sort of the effect appeared and impressed you?
So I think I could point to a few kind of classic things that are done. I mean, one would relate to the Centennial, which was the creation of the Centennial House, the Habitat for Humanity house that was constructed in Houston's 5th Ward here. That was led by Tawfiq Jarjur and a whole team of students who raised the funding, got architects to do the design for it, got engineers to work on it, worked with the city to identify a location, worked with Habitat for Humanity to get all the permitting done, and actually built the houses. There's a family living in a house right now in the city of Houston, constructed entirely on the initiative of Rice students to make that happen, and the initiative to find the funding necessary to make it happen. That was a student-led endeavor from the word go. There's actually a program going on campus today that I think is sort of typical of Rice students as well, that they just did on their own, which is this thing called, goes by TMP, it's the Mentoring Project, which is a way for a large number of students to mentor high school students who otherwise might not be thinking of applying to universities, to help them. How do you fill out the application process? How do you write an essay? How do you complete the financial aid form? What is it like to be on a Rice on a campus, particularly the Rice campus? There are dozens of students involved in this, affecting the lives of hundreds of high school students. Again, just out of the goodness of their hearts, they decided to do it.
Okay. Another thing is, sort of all the things, sound bites you get told by Rice is one of the things is we're like the first happiest students in America. I was just wondering if they if anyone, or if you knew how they measured that, like how did they measure happiness?
I think they should just ask students, how happy are you? I don't think it's a really detailed methodology.
Okay.
That said, it is reflective of all of our observations. Our students do seem extremely happy here.
Okay.
I've been asked why I think that's true. I even gave a talk on that during Families Weekend. What is it that makes people happy here? We had a talk during the Wellbeing Project a couple of weeks ago, where I just sat with a whole group of students and we talked about what does it mean to be happy at Rice, and why do we have this sort of sense of happiness, and how do we bring that happiness to other folks? And my reaction to it is actually that people come here to be challenged, and we give them those challenges, and we give them the resources necessary to surmount those challenges, and that's a deeply gratifying thing to have happen in your life. To take on something difficult and succeed feels really good, and that's going to make you happy. And I think that's what happens with our Rice students, is we give them lots of opportunities, we give them lots of resources to support whatever their initiatives are, and then we watch the wonderful things that they do.
Okay. My next question is probably about perhaps the less sort of idyllic part is I do know there are some people I know actually have had a lot of issues with the Center for Mental Health and Center for Mental Well-Being. I was just wondering if you were at all aware of these sorts of things.
I'm not quite sure what your question is. You're talking about people who have needed those resources?
Yes, I found
okay,
that actually quite a few people that I've just talked to, and we actually put out a question to the student population and got a couple responses along the lines of like sort of, do you get a feel for not just the general student populace, but perhaps the smaller section of the student populace that actually need help, they seem to be under the idea that they're not getting it, or in some way it's they seem to harbor a resentment. I was just wondering if you were at all aware of this. Or...
I've never heard anything along the lines of a resentment.
Okay.
I think on occasion there have been frustrations because of demand for the services. In other words, a waiting line to be able to get an appropriate appointment. We actually are responding in very affirmative ways to make sure that that is minimized as much as possible. We've beefed up, we've added resources to the center, we've expanded the facilities that the center has available to it within the last 2 years. We have modified some of the protocols for things that happen in the center to try to be more ready to respond to crises and issues as they arise, but we can always do more.
Okay. And I know that for a while the Wellness Center, at least I don't know if it's still this way, but it's not really open on weekends or nights, and I find that definitely as a student, the times when I actually get, sort of most stressed and most, I really need to talk to someone are actually those late nights and those weekends when you're just so stressed with work. I was wondering if there's any sort of initiative to maybe try and create a 24-hour sort of help network at some point.
We do actually have a 24-hour help line that gives us the ability to then connect back to counselors. We always have a counselor on call 24/7. We don't have office hours 24/7. I think that would be difficult to achieve, but I do think we could have office hours in the evening. One of the things that we're waiting on right now is we're in the process now of searching for a new director for the counseling center, and changes like you're talking about here, I'm sure we'll wait until we have the new director on board. That should happen this semester.
Okay. Well,
How am I doing on time?
Yeah.
I have to go in a minute.
You're
Yeah.
wonderful on time.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, well, thank you for all your time. This has
Absolutely,
been
yeah.
Dean Hutch, Rice University on RTV5.